Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to go through a list of some end of the year 5-star predictions. And not all these are necessarily coming out at the end of this year, although that's true for some of them, but others are books that came out this year that I just haven't picked up yet that I really think I'm going to enjoy. Others are sequels where I liked the first book in the series and I'm guessing I'm going to keep liking the rest of the installments. Some of them are the first books in series, but they still fit within the backlist category. So we do have a mix of books coming from different places, and we're not necessarily going to go in any particular order. We're just going to kind of chat through these. And the reason I wanted to do this is because while I don't like doing this too often, just because I feel like it kind of sets me up for disappointment if I'm putting on too many books too often. Oh, this is absolutely going to blow my mind. It's going to fit my taste perfectly. I'm going to love it. I just feel like I don't then go into these books meeting them where they are. Instead, I'm kind of imposing onto them what I want them to be. So I do prefer to resist that. However, I do like on occasion engaging in this style, as I do think it helps to have ourselves reflecting on what are our tastes, what do we actually like, and how often does the thing I described for not wanting to do this too frequently, how often does that actually play a role? When I say, oh, I'm pretty sure I'm going to really love this, does that actually mean that more often than not I don't like it as much because I put too high of expectations on it? So I kind of like dipping my toes in this concept from time to time, just to allow for that self-reflection, and also to share with all of you some books that I think I'm gonna like. I have a feeling a lot of us have an idea in our heads, though, of what we think we like, and then we don't actually challenge that. So I'm kind of trying to challenge myself in differentiating what I think I like versus what perhaps I don't like as much as I thought I did. I'm very curious to know what is something that has fit this for you in the past. What's something that you thought you liked, but then the more that you were reading stories or watching movies or playing games that had that component, the more you realize like, oh, I don't actually like this. I just liked that one story that happened to contain this, and I took the wrong thing out of that as a, this is what I like. I would love to know what is an example of that for you. But anyway, on that note, without further ado, let's jump into it. The first two on the list are new releases, one that's going to be coming out very soon at the time I'm filming this anyway, and then one that has come out earlier this year. The first one on the list is Hemlock and Silver, which is by T. Kingfisher. So I'm already thinking I'm going to like it because T. Kingfisher is a pretty safe bet for me. I've never come away from a T. Kingfisher book being disappointed, annoyed, angry. I've never had those feelings. There are some that I'm like, that one was fine, not my favorite. But most of the time I come away being like, that was fun, or wow, I wasn't expecting this and this, but I really like this. A Sorceress Comes to Call is such a great genre blender. Also, I just like T. Kingfisher's writing in general, and it just feels like she's always evolving in her works, and that even when we're touching on maybe fairy tales that we've some familiarity with, or maybe we're approaching genres we read a lot of, I just feel like T. Kingfisher always brings something new to the table, or something fresh, or her unique authorial voice, and it ends up standing out in a way that I really enjoy. And I'm thinking Hemlock and Silver is going to be no different. I do always want to allow room for the fact that just because I have liked an author's previous works doesn't mean that everything is going to work for me, but we're kind of on a roll, you know? I like Nettle and Bone a lot. I liked A Sorceress Comes to Call a lot. The horror fantasy or just thriller horror books that I've picked up by this author, I've enjoyed those too. So I think there's a pretty decent chance with Hemlock and Silver. This feels like a pretty safe bet. I will say, before I get into the other ones on this list, I maybe perhaps will do a reflection on this and see, because there have been times in the past where I've for whatever reason, like I need to link something or whatever the case may be, and when I'm getting the link for a video, I remember what I said in the video, and I'm like, oh no, I ended up feeling completely different about that book than I thought I would. I feel like a great example, you know, is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, or The Dragonbone Chair. Those are examples of books that I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'm going to really love this, and then after I read it, I'm like, I really didn't love this. Hopefully that's not what happens with any of these, but that'll be fun to reflect back on and see if that does happen. So at least there's that silver lining. Next up, though, we have The Raven Scholar. As always, I've tried to avoid saying any specifics about this one as it is a new release, but I do know that some of my patrons really enjoyed this. I have seen some people say they feel excited about new fantasy releases again because of this book. They feel like it's, once again, kind of what I said about T. Kingfisher. They feel like it's blending genres and it's doing it in a really fun and creative way. And then in general, I know that somebody who worked on this book actually said it was one of their favorite things they've worked on. And so I'm like, okay, that a lot of those signs are telling me this is probably going to be great. Plus, when I read the synopsis in an anticipated releases video, I thought, that sounds really good. I read it before the anticipated releases video, and I thought that sounded good, and that's why I shared it in an anticipated releases. And I genuinely have been anticipating it ever since I heard about it, talked about it, shared in the anticipated releases, and I've been wanting to pick it up. So this one I'm pretty sure I'm going to quite enjoy. From there, we are going in a completely different direction. We're actually going to mention a nonfiction book, and I do tend to hold back on being too, I guess you could say, opinionated about nonfiction works. That's probably not the right way to put it, but I try not to think of nonfiction in a tier ranking sort of way or in a star rating kind of way, just because I feel like nonfiction oftentimes, especially things like memoirs, it just feels odd to prescribe a rating based off of my enjoyment or what I took out of it, when sometimes it's something that's very deeply personal and it's not meant to be entertaining. There's just some gray area for me personally when it comes to how I approach nonfiction. That said, this particular book that I'm going to be picking up, I'm pretty sure it's going to be very, very powerful. It's going to be enlightening in the sense that even though I'm aware of the topics it's addressing, I'm pretty sure it's going to get into specifics that are going to be so alarming and disturbing that I'm going to probably come away from it being like, wow, there's a lot put into this book, and isn't it awful how things are? And that book would be Devil in the Grove. This is a recommendation from my husband. So my husband and I are doing a book swap. I'm recommending some books to him, and he's recommending some books to me. And I told him, you can mix it up. It doesn't just have to be books. You can even recommend to me a comic. You can recommend whatever that you think that I might enjoy, or that you really, really enjoy and that you want me to read. And this is one of the books that he recommended to me. The idea behind this is we're investigating crimes, basically, that weren't actually very thoroughly investigated, and certain biases led people to be like, oh yeah, this is the result of the investigation, where you're like, you didn't investigate as thoroughly as you should have. And I know that Sean thought it was an exceptional book. It's one of his favorite nonfiction books. So I'm trusting his opinion, and also he knows my tastes pretty well. So, and we have lots of conversations because we live together and we love each other and we talk to each other a lot. I am guessing that he probably hit the nail on the head with giving me a recommendation that I'm going to get a lot from. Returning to fiction though, next up we have another author who up until this point has not disappointed, but I've only read 3 books by them and they're all part of the same series, and I really liked that series. In fact, it's one of my favorite series of all time. So I am guessing I'm going to like this other series as well, and that would be the Talon Sister duology. I'm only putting the first book on the list, but I do hope to read both of these before the end of the year, because I actually waited until the duology was complete to pick them up because I wanted to be able to read them back to back. And I have high hopes because I just found that Jen Williams was so creative in the creation of her fantasy epic that was the Winnowing Flame trilogy. There were certain things that felt familiar, and there were certain pieces of it that it felt like, well, this feels a little like this, or this feels like this kind of character archetype, or this feels like this mythological race. But the way everything came together, and the blending of science fiction and fantasy, it was just all so interesting and fascinating, and I was so thoroughly engrossed throughout, and I loved the trying to piece together what was going on. I loved how, at times, frustrating, but endearing the characters were. I just fell in love with that series, as many of you know, and I think it's still to this day one of the most underhyped and underappreciated fantasy series out there. If you like epic fantasy and you want something that's a great blend of science fiction and fantasy, Winnowing Flame, it's great. As a result of loving Winnowing Flame so much, I think I'm gonna like Talon Sister. I know sometimes authors go in really different directions. They take hard right turns and then they write something very different from their previous works, and I always applaud those efforts. At times it can be really successful, and I think it's great because someone like T. Kingfisher does go in a bunch of different directions, and then I think when she returns to certain genres, she kind of brings what she got out of the writing, or at least that's my interpretation anyway. I feel like from writing another genre, she kind of learns from that, and then that's part of why things always feel so fresh when she's coming back to genre she's written in before. And so I recognize that there are a lot of benefits to authors doing those sorts of things, but also I know that Jen Williams has done this, because I'm pretty sure Jen Williams has written thrillers. I think that she has a maybe fantasy romance or YA fantasy coming out this year, But regardless, I haven't read those other ones. I just know she's done that. But I want to go into the next epic fantasy that she's written with Talon Sister, just because I loved the epic fantasy that she's written so much. So I really have high hopes for Talon Sister. And I'm always a sucker for the mythological creature, which I know we get in this particular duology. Next up, speaking of duologies, we have A Fire Endless. So I read A River Enchanted. Really liked A River Enchanted. It wasn't necessarily absolutely perfect, all-time new favorite necessarily. Not because I felt like there was anything particularly wrong with it or anything like that. It just didn't quite hit me on the level that some of my other favorites do. But it's also the first in a duology, and so I have to continue on to get the rest of the story. And I do have hopes that the things that we left off with at the end of A River Enchanted, that we're going to really expand on those things. And then just we're going to get the story in its entirety in a way that is really satisfying. This next book is the only reread on the list, which might feel a little bit like cheating, but that would be Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan. And I am hoping, if I can, to buddy read this with Erin from Booked and Busy, because we both really like the main character of the story. We've both read the first books, but we never ended up getting the chance to keep going, or at least for myself, I should say, I had the chance, and then I just always ended up being like, but I've heard the rest of the series isn't as good, and then I thought that for so long, and then I just didn't get around to the rest of the series, and I easily could have, I just hadn't, and I want to, so both of us are kind of in a similar camp. I'm hoping to reread this, love it as much as I did the first time, and then at least enjoy the rest of the series. However, I always, and I don't know if others experience this as well, but I always have fears that when I reread things that I loved before, that I'm going to be like, what was I thinking? This sucks. And I don't know if I truly think I'm going to find Bloodsong to fit that description, but I do always just have this like, oh, I'm not going to think it's as good as I thought it was the first time, or I'm going to realize I was delusional. I don't know what I was going through then to think that this is good. I really think I'm still gonna think it's great though. I really think, if anything, I think I'm gonna appreciate it more this go around, because it does the reflecting on your life, that setup that we're fairly familiar with, a lot of us in fantasy circles. I think it does that really exceptionally, and I like Valen as a protagonist. Like Kvoth in Name of the Wind. I don't really like Kvoth that much, so that setup, I'm just like, ugh, I don't really want to hear you talk about yourself. But with Valen, I'm like, tell me more. How did we get to this point? You're so cool. I really love Valen. It's more than that. I'm giving a very stupid way of describing my feelings for that book, but I'm really hopeful that I'll continue to like Bloodsong. Luna just grumbled really loudly if you heard that. Next up we have, I'm kind of embarrassed by this, Priory of the Orange Tree. I have accidentally DNF'd this book, I think 2 or 3 times at this point. And never because I don't like the book. Always because I end up, it's the time that I pick it up. I know one time I picked it up and I was traveling a lot, and then I didn't really feel like I was really engaging with the story in a way that it deserved to be engaged with. I felt like I was not retaining the information. I'm like, that's not fair to the book. But then I just didn't get back to it because I'm like, I probably need to restart. And then so I had accidentally DNF'd it then. And then that had happened multiple other times. Not always because of traveling, just that general, I just kept accidentally DNFing it. And I really liked it. And I really think I'm going to really like it. I think I'm going to keep liking it. I just need to finish it. So it's stupid, but Priory of the Orange Tree is on this list. I feel this is like a compilation of just me being stupid, is what this whole video is. Next up we have Trader Baru Cormorant. It's gonna be really amusing to me if that's not how you say that word, after I just said that this is a compilation of me being dumb. But to my understanding, it's pronounced Trader Baru Cormorant. Anyway, this is a book that I believe is very politically heavy, and I really enjoy the Aurelian Cycle by Rosaria Munda, and I've seen Rosaria Munda say that she really likes the political aspects of this series, and I'm like, well, say no more. So that's kind of what put it on the map for me, and I am also planning to do this for a video project that I have, and I can't really elaborate. I will elaborate when I do that video project as to how I came to get this recommended to me in a roundabout kind of way again. But I really, really like well done political intrigue. If you can really nail political intrigue, it is probably going to be something that I absolutely adore. For example, I feel like The Goblin Emperor is fantastic in that area. It excels. For these last two, I am predicting I'm going to really love these. I'm also really hoping to really love these. And that would be the books in the Gale Song series. But then also there's going to be a new book that I believe is in this world. I've tried not to look too into it because I don't want to be spoiled, but it's called Daughter of the Other World. So I started kind of randomly. I picked up this series. The first book is called The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. I thought it was fantastic. For me, this is now going to be one of those books that there are certain subgenres of fantasy that I think certain books represent really, really well. I think this book represents historical fantasy fantastically. And I loved the first book. I do plan to continue going with the series. And I really, really hope, because if the next books deliver upon what we got in the first and then expand on those things as well as, or even better than what was in the first book, then this has a chance of being a new all-time favorite series. So I'm very excited to keep going. I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep liking it because it just needs to match the first book. And then also, I can be very picky about continuation series, but I just already have a lot of trust in this author, and there's already so many other characters and concepts that I could see being explored in a way that I would find really exciting and that I would genuinely want to dive into. I'm excited that the author, I think, is what is happening in those others. Like I said, I haven't looked too much into it because I'm afraid of spoilers, but if there's anybody that I'm like, oh, I can definitely see writing more within this world, I think it's what this author has done, and I have high hopes. So that's it for some books that are my end of the year 5-star predictions. This is also in a way me trying to kind of map out some books that I really want to highly prioritize for the end of the year. Let me know, first off, the question I asked at the beginning, what are some books that you've told yourself, I like this in my stories, thus I will like this thing, and then you've realized, oh, never mind, I don't really like that. And then also, if you have any thoughts about books that you also think are going to be 5 stars for you here at the end of the year, let me know what your 5-star predictions are. I'm really excited, and I always like trying to gauge what your interests are. It's kind of fun to see where we have alignment, where we overlap, and where we completely are different. I just think it's really fun to see all of your reading tastes as well. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.